story kicks off with Mary welcoming her parents back home. They tease her, asking if she was lonely while they were gone. Mary proudly says no because her friend Rose kept her company. Then, the parents dropped a bomb. They introduce her new sibling, the kid they'll probably love more from now on. Mary is thrilled to have a baby brother, Cheyenne. Cheyenne eventually wakes up, drooling like a champ to meet his sister. Mary plants a kiss on his cheek, and the baby immediately looks like he's reconsidering his entire life. Fast forward a few years, and Mary is celebrating yet another victory over her brother in some physical game. Cheyenne, however, would rather be playing Call of Duty because, let's face it, he's not catching up to Mary's energy anytime soon. When their father Gawain comes home, Mary's excitement levels go through the roof. Cheyenne, meanwhile, is still amazed by how his sister never runs out of steam. Gawain pretends to enjoy Mary's hyperactiveness, while she brags about everyone calling her bright as the sun, thanks to her golden hair. Gawain is proud of his golden child, but Cheyenne sarcastically quips that Mary is also the most dependable, stealing her thunder for a second. Mary loves the praise but knows Cheyenne is the real MVP. He's the one helping their mom, not wetting the bed anymore, unlike her, and sometimes acting like a full-blown adult. She brushes it off but secretly takes comfort in knowing Cheyenne's embarrassing secret. When no one's watching, he likes to pretend he's a badass adventurer. One night, Cheyenne decides to ask their dad the big question: do monsters exist? Gawain, not one to sugarcoat, says, "Yup, they're real." He goes on to warn his kids to never leave the property because monsters attack people on sight. If they ever see one, they should run screaming for help like their lives depend on it. To lighten the mood, Gawain mentions that fairies exist too. He's even seen a few himself, though they're incredibly rare. Spirits? Not so sure, but fairies? Absolutely. Feeling bold, Cheyenne asks another question: what about magic? Gawain looks at him like he just asked for a unicorn. Magic? Nope, doesn't exist. He's never even heard of it. He admits there are things he doesn't know, but magic isn't one of them. Suspicious, Gawain asks where Cheyenne even heard about magic, fairies, and spirits. The kid clams up, saying he's fine, though Mary notices he looks upset. After that, Cheyenne never says the word magic again. 3 years later, Mary is training hard as usual. Cheyenne wonders why she's so dedicated, and her answer is simple: she's the big sister. If monsters or bad guys show up, she wants to be ready to fight them off, while Cheyenne runs for his life. Cheyenne, the family bookworm, is stunned that she's doing all this for him. Mary doesn't mind. She's naturally good at fighting, even if she's not the sharpest tool in the shed. She tells Cheyenne not to stress about it. A little later, Mary is training by the lake when her friend Rose shows up. Rose asks how she doesn't get bored of all the constant training. Mary tells her to stop whining and spar with her instead. Rose, exhausted from helping her grandpa all day, says no. She also asks why Mary doesn't spar with Cheyenne. Mary explains that her brother is too busy, locked up in the house, buried in books as always. Mary reflects on how Cheyenne hasn't said the word magic since that day their dad crushed his dreams. Still, she's convinced all his obsessive studying is his way of searching for answers. While Mary is with her friend Rose, they notice a strange glow that leaves them both stunned. Later, Mary drags Cheyenne to the lake, claiming she's got something amazing to show him. Cheyenne, ever the rule follower, reminds her they're not supposed to wander too far. Mary brushes him off, promising it's safe and monster-free. She knows their mom will be furious, but she's certain it'll be worth the trouble. When they arrive, the glow appears again, and Cheyenne is blown away by the sight of glowing orbs floating near the water. Mary had shown the orbs to their parents before, but they couldn't see them. Cheyenne wonders if adults just can't see them, but Mary explains that even some kids couldn't. Everyone seems to see the orbs differently, and Mary, brilliant as ever, thinks it must be connected to magic. Cheyenne is stunned. She remembers the word, but Mary smugly reminds him she never forgets anything about her little brother. Cheyenne gets emotional, thanking her for showing him the orbs. Mary jokes that the lights must have cured his depression, and they enjoy the moment together. The next morning, their parents are baffled by how quickly the kids inhale their breakfast before dashing off to the lake again. Cheyenne's lack of athletic ability is immediately obvious as he struggles to breathe after their little jog. Once there, his inner nerd kicks in. He wants to investigate the orbs scientifically. He devises a plan to fill 3 buckets, one with sand and rocks, one with water plants, and one with fish. Mary, with her usual enthusiasm but zero understanding, agrees to help. They manage to fill the first 2 buckets but struggle to catch fish. Cheyenne doesn't mind, he's just happy to spend time with Mary. Mary, in her usual big sister fashion, says it's normal for siblings to be this close. Deep down though, she's just as excited as he is. She really wants to know if magic exists. Eventually they catch a fish, but Cheyenne is disappointed to find it's just a common male trout. Isabel says that the trout may be magical at first. At this moment, Rose shows up and Mary introduces her brother. Rose introduces herself dramatically, but Mary quickly tells Cheyenne not to be fooled. Rose isn't as fancy as she pretends to be. The 3 of them discuss the orbs, but despite their efforts, the buckets don't produce any orbs, leading Cheyenne to conclude that the orbs must be coming from a living creature in the lake. Determined to find the source, Cheyenne decides to wade into the water. Mary, ever protective, joins him. Cheyenne touches one of the orbs, finding it warm and harmless. The water is too murky to see much, but he's certain the orbs are coming from something alive that moves around. Later, Cheyenne thanks Mary for helping him. She tells him he doesn't need to thank family so much, but he insists, and she lets it slide. Just then, Rose arrives, holding a female trout. She explains that male trout are common, but females stay deep underwater. They put the female trout in the bucket with the male, and suddenly, orbs start appearing. Cheyenne realizes the orbs are part of a mating ritual. Rose explains that it's like the fish are getting married to start a family. Mary, being Mary, thinks it's just like how she and Cheyenne are family. Cheyenne quickly corrects her, putting an end to that weird comparison. The next day, Mary casually mentions getting scolded by their mom for saying she wanted to marry Cheyenne. She admits she's scared they won't always be together, but Cheyenne reassures her they will. He promises to do whatever it takes, and Mary gets teary-eyed. Then, something wild happens. Cheyenne starts glowing. He realizes it might be magical energy and figures the orbs must have imprinted something inside him. Mary, embarrassed and confused, wonders what it all means. Cheyenne, on the other hand, is laser-focused. He declares that magic might not exist yet, but that's only because it hasn't been invented. He's ready to change that. In a shocking twist, we learn Cheyenne was reincarnated into this world. Fueled by his glowing discovery, he vows to create magic and make it a reality. We are taken back to modern-day Japan, where a guy is counting down to midnight on his 30th birthday. He's hyped because, according to some goofy legend, if you're a virgin at 30, you get magical powers. So naturally, he tries to summon a fireball. Nothing. Lightning spell? Nada. Frustrated, he lies on his back, rethinks his life, and then decides to go big. He whips out a little magic book and tries to summon some creature of light and darkness. Yeah, that fails too. Feeling like a clown, he accepts that magic isn't real, and staying a virgin for 3 decades was just a tragic waste. But life isn't done with him yet. He suddenly has a heart attack, clutching his magic book, and mutters, "I don't want to die," before everything goes dark. Next thing we know, he's reborn in a new world as a guy named Cheyenne. Reflecting on his old life, he realizes his only spark of joy came from that wizard dream, which, spoiler alert, was a bust. In his new life, he spends 3 years chasing magic like it owes him money. He researches, asks questions, and experiments like a mad scientist, but when he asked his dad about spells, the man had no idea what he was talking about. Ouch. One day, a strange energy at a lake gives him hope, but still, no spells work. Now he's stuck in a constant cycle of doubt, lying in bed, questioning everything. Enter his sister, Marie, who barges in without knocking. Annoyed, he tells her to knock next time. She claps back, asking if he's hiding something. He almost gives a cheeky answer but drops it, asking her to sit instead. Then Cheyenne stares at her like she's an alien, making her ask what's wrong. Out of nowhere, he says, "Marie, I love you." Boom! Magic energy explodes around him. Turns out, confessing love might be his secret to unlocking magic. He's thrilled but also horrified because, seriously? Does he have to confess every time he wants to cast a spell? That's awkward. Marie, of course, is furious. She thinks he's using her for magic experiments. Cheyenne insists his feelings are real, and just like that, she melts. She forgives him and even asks about his magical discovery. Cheyenne, meanwhile, is feeling smug. He might finally crack this magic thing, even if it means becoming a walking romance novel. Cheyenne tells Marie he thinks magic flows out of him when he taps into strong emotions. But it's not just about saying I love you. Marie gets all flustered, asking if he's about to confess his love again, even saying she needs to brace herself. But he clears it up, disappointing her with his serious tone. Cheyenne sits alone, thinking about how confessing his feelings made him super aware of them, almost like hugging his own emotions. He figures magic might come from other feelings too, like joy, excitement, or hope, so he focuses on happy thoughts and manages to release some magic. Sure, it's just a little glow, but hey, it's proof magic exists. That's a massive win in his book. Cheyenne starts feeling like a scientist, comparing magic to electric eels. Just like eels have special organs to zap stuff, humans here might have a magic organ that helps them create and control magical energy. Feeling pretty smart, he names this phenomenon the magically charged state. Marie is thrilled to see her brother this excited, probably for the first time ever. Over the next month, Cheyenne learns some quirks about magic. It's tricky to stay in the magically charged state. It drains you fast, and people without magic can't even see it. Still, those little discoveries keep him going. But there's one problem. He can't make a single light orb like the ones he saw at the lake. He jokes that he's basically a magical flashlight with no batteries. He doesn't give up. Remembering the glowing trout from the lake, he tries to focus magic into his hand. It's tough. The energy flow feels like a rogue garden hose. He finally figures out a trick. He convinces himself he'd be really happy if magic flowed into his hand. It works. His hand starts glowing, and Cheyenne feels like a superhero. Naturally, he punches a wall to test his new power, only to break his own hand. So much for being unstoppable. Still, he's hyped. He names his new move Magical Grouping and calls the magic Gathered Magic. Feeling like a genius, he's ready to keep experimenting. The next day, Cheyenne shows up for sword training with his dad, Marie, and Rose. He's already exhausted from all the magic stuff, but his dad doesn't care. He tells them to take training seriously because even wooden swords can be dangerous. Cheyenne, being Cheyenne, raises his hand like he's in class and declares he has zero interest in sword fighting. He argues that it's pointless since he doesn't plan on fighting anyone. His dad, being the wise old warrior, explains that swords aren't just for picking fights. They're for defending yourself against monsters. Rose eagerly adds that she asked to learn swordsmanship to protect herself. Marie, ever the supportive sibling, gives Cheyenne a pep talk, convincing him to give it a go. Cheyenne agrees, but secretly wishes he was back home, experimenting with magic. Training begins, and Cheyenne, bless his heart, swings a sword like he's trying to swat a fly. Meanwhile, Rose turns out to have natural talent. Their dad is so impressed, he says she could become a skilled swordswoman one day if she sticks with it. Then it's Marie's turn, and she steps up with the confidence of someone about to ace a test. Cheyenne, on the other hand, watches nervously, bracing for disaster. Marie charges at their dad with surprising speed, faking a frontal attack to make him block before pivoting to strike from below. It's a clever move, but dad is a seasoned pro. He dodges and gently taps her on the head with his sword to end the duel. He praises her creativity, but points out that her movements are too wide. Still, he says, she'll be a force to be reckoned with in the future. Marie lights up like a kid who just got a gold star at school. With sword training done, Cheyenne bolts back to his true love, magic. He's gotten pretty good at holding on to magical energy and can now manage it several times a day, but his progress has slowed. Frustrated, he decides it's time to rethink his approach. While he's brainstorming, his dad pops in and invites him on a trip to Historia. Cheyenne perks up, thinking it might be a chance for adventure. The family heads to Historia, and Cheyenne explains it's a bustling city in their region. When they arrive, Dad lays out the plan. Finish shopping, visit the blacksmith, and head home. He warns Cheyenne and Marie to stay close so they don't get lost, much to Cheyenne's annoyance. He realizes he won't have time to explore or hunt for magic clues. He resigns himself to sticking with the family for now, but promises himself he'll come back to Historia when he's older and do some real exploring. At one point, while their parents are busy shopping, Marie suddenly giggles. Cheyenne, curious, asks why, but she brushes it off, saying she's just being herself. Eventually, they head to the blacksmith. The blacksmith, a cheerful guy named Glass, greets their dad and mentions a special sword he's crafted for Marie's birthday. Marie freezes, surprised, as Glass presents her with a beautifully made sword that's just her size. When she unsheaths it, her face lights up with pure joy, and she can't stop smiling. On the ride home, Marie feels a little guilty that Cheyenne didn't get anything, but he shrugs it off, reminding her it's her birthday, not his, and he doesn't really want a sword anyway. But then something catches his eye. A shop with a sign that reads, Fairy Cellar. Intrigued, he asks his dad about it. Gawain, clearly uncomfortable, brushes off the question and tells Cheyenne it's nothing he needs to worry about. Cheyenne, sensing there's more to it, files the shop's name away in his mind. Something tells him it's a place he'll need to check out someday. The late afternoon sun fell behind dark clouds as a man walked home, his bundle of wood growing heavier. What began as a slight drizzle ended a deluge. He picked up his pace, and a boy appeared out of nowhere, tripping on his own feet and tumbling at the man's feet. Sopping and desperate, the boy leapt up, flailing his arms like he was about to take off. Ultimately, he managed to wheeze out a warning. People were being abducted by goblins. At home, Cheyenne was practicing magic, or at least attempting to. He held out his right hand, glowing like a cheap flashlight. Small victories, of course, but really nothing to boast about. Marie, who was gazing at her brother with a mixture of concern and pity, realized he wasn't exactly over the moon. She sensed the warmth of his spell in the back of her mind, testament to the fact that he was somehow getting better at controlling it. But Cheyenne? He was restless. He was hoping to do something cool, like making his socks float. But all he had now was luminescent light, without purpose. He dreamed of magic that might change the world, not a nightlight in his hand. While Cheyenne's thoughts wandered, he remembered fairies and people who seemed to treat them like they were exotic pets, sold in cages at the market. His dad had hated when Cheyenne took an interest in the train station fairy in the town, called it dangerous. Suddenly, the sound of the front door crashing open interrupted Cheyenne's musings. Gawain, their father, strode in, his expression grim. He quickly armed the men in the house, delivering dire news. Goblins were nearby, and they posed a real threat. The urgency in his voice left no room for doubt. This was no ordinary night. Upstairs, the rest of the family worked together to fortify the second floor, barricading the door with furniture. The house transformed into a stronghold as the storm raged outside. Cheyenne felt a swirl of emotions, anxious yet curious. Goblins were often dismissed as weak and troublesome, but he suspected they were more dangerous than people believed. Outside the house, a goblin leaped effortlessly over the wall and crept toward the structure. It moved with predatory precision, peering through the boarded-up windows on the first floor. Finding no way in, it turned to the front door, scratching it repeatedly. The sound echoed upstairs, where Cheyenne and the others were hiding. Though Marie hoped it was their father, Cheyenne knew better. The scratching grew louder, morphing into a terrifying noise that gripped everyone with fear. Just as the tension reached its peak, the sound stopped. The silence was short-lived, however, as the unmistakable shatter of glass filled the air. The goblin had found its way inside. Marie's voice broke in nervous chatter, but Cheyenne motioned for silence, understanding the gravity of the situation. The goblin's footsteps thudded on the stairs, each step amplifying the dread in the room. Those hiding inside tried desperately to stifle their breathing, clinging to the hope of remaining unnoticed. Relief came briefly as the goblin passed their door, but a sudden clap of thunder startled a mother and her child. Their frightened screams betrayed their location, and the goblin turned its attention to the barricaded door. Within moments, it breached the room. The grotesque creature stood before the group, reveling in their fear. Cheyenne's mother stepped forward, begging for mercy for the children. But as she stumbled and fell, the goblin let out a cruel laugh, relishing its dominance. It was clear the creature understood its power over them. Marie, refusing to cower, drew her sword and pointed it at the goblin, her determination unwavering. Cheyenne silently pleaded with her to retreat, but Marie remained resolute, remembering her promise to protect her brother. The goblin, unimpressed, swatted the sword from her hand and embedded it into the wall. Advancing on the girl, it swung its claws, but their mother shielded Marie, taking the full brunt of the attack. Cheyenne swiped at her with the leather cloth across her back. She crumpled to the floor, gravely injured. Marie screamed in despair, but the goblin pressed on, ready to finish them. Driven by instinct and desperation, Cheyenne lunged at the creature, grabbing its arm. He knew he couldn't overpower it physically, but something within him ignited. His body began to emit magical energy, a force he struggled to control but refused to stop gathering. To the others, who couldn't see the energy, the scene was inexplicable. Yet the goblin reacted violently, recoiling as its arm burned from the unseen magic. It flung Cheyenne against the wall, but the boy, now fully focused, channeled his power once more. Summoning all his strength, he directed the magical energy at the goblin's head. The creature thrashed wildly before collapsing. Cheyenne, trembling, stared at the motionless goblin. His hand throbbed with a painful burn from the magic, and his heart raced with the realization of what he had done. Around him, the villagers looked on in shock. Rose, however, assured him that his actions had saved them all, but the victory was bittersweet. Emma, his mother, lay pale and bloodied, her life slipping away. Cheyenne focused on her, knowing that stopping the bleeding was his only chance to save her. Realizing he couldn't treat her on the ground, he called for help. With the assistance of the other women, Emma was moved to a bed. Cheyenne urgently asked if anyone had medical or herbal knowledge, but in the small village, no one possessed such skills. Recalling lessons from his past life, he remembered how injuries were treated in the movies and shows he had seen. The first step was stitching the wound. Determined to act, he asked if anyone could sew. A young woman hesitantly raised her hand, and he instructed her to retrieve sewing supplies from Emma's room, while others gathered strong spirits and clean cloth. The grim task of moving the goblin's corpse to the corridor fell to the remaining villagers. Before joining them, a boy slightly younger than Cheyenne grasped his hand and thanked him, his gratitude giving Cheyenne a renewed sense of purpose. Soon, all the materials were assembled. Cheyenne asked the seamstress her name, and she introduced herself as Leah. Cutting away his mother's clothing to examine the injury, Cheyenne saw that the wound, while severe, wasn't as deep as he feared. His main concern was whether the goblin's claws carried poison, but he quickly pushed the thought aside. There was no time for doubt. He asked Leah to begin stitching the wound, but her hesitation revealed an unsettling truth. Suctioning wounds was unfamiliar in this world. Cheyenne explained the necessity of closing the wound, emphasizing the dangers of leaving it exposed. Leah struggled with the idea, fearing she would hurt Emma more, but Cheyenne's urgency made her realize there was no alternative. Overcoming her fear, she began the delicate process with trembling hands. Hours later, Emma was lying in bed, her breathing steady, and her condition stabilized. Cheyenne expressed his heartfelt gratitude to Leah for her effort. Relief swept through the house, and Marie, unable to hold back her emotions, embraced her brother, her tears flowing freely. Cheyenne hugged her in return, his own eyes welling up. Their moment was interrupted by the sound of the men returning from the forest. They reported finding the goblin lair and eliminating 2 of the creatures, but traces of others suggested the threat wasn't entirely gone. For now, though, the village had peace. A doctor was summoned to examine Emma's condition. After a thorough check, he confirmed that the wounds, while deep, hadn't damaged any vital organs. The stitching was commendable and played a significant role in her recovery. With proper rest and nutrition, Emma would heal completely. Later, Marie confided in Emma, blaming herself for what had happened. Emma took her daughter's hand, reassuring her that she had been brave and should be proud of her actions. Meanwhile, Gawain spoke privately with Cheyenne, having heard of his son's efforts to save Emma. He marveled at the boy's resourcefulness, though he couldn't fathom how a child could possess such knowledge. Cheyenne, inwardly aware of his past life as a 30-year-old Japanese man, simply claimed he had done his best. Gawain pressed him about the goblin encounter and the strange burn mark left on the creature. When Cheyenne hesitated, his father deduced that magic was involved. Gawain remarked on Cheyenne's mature demeanor and frequent interest in magic, which had raised his suspicions. Realizing there was no hiding the truth, Cheyenne asked for his father's trust. Gawain, though conflicted, warned him of the dangers associated with magic. He forbade further study, citing the risks it posed. Marie, however, defended her brother, insisting that his knowledge of magic had saved their family. Despite his father's opposition, Cheyenne stood firm. Magic was his passion, and he couldn't abandon it. Gawain, seeing his son's unwavering resolve, relented under one condition: Cheyenne's studies would be closely monitored. Encouraging his son to remain steadfast in his pursuit, Gawain assured him of his support, even if the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. In some ways, Gawain awakened at Josiah the same way an apprenticeship will. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. The very next day, Gawain lights a fire at his son's request. His son, Cheyenne, gathers mana in his hand and extends it toward the fire, causing an explosion and fire to spark on his hand. Gawain quickly rushes to throw water on him, warning that this experiment is way too dangerous. Meanwhile, Cheyenne explains that he wanted to see what would happen if magic met high-level magical energy. He learned something important after facing a goblin, but he also wanted to test how magic reacts with natural phenomena. What he discovered was that the flames turned blue and reacted with the magic cluster. Gawain, who couldn't see the magical energy, trusts his son's judgment and keeps an eye on him. Meanwhile, Marie feels left out, but Cheyenne comforts her, saying that if it weren't for her, he would have never discovered his own magical energy. Marie feels proud, realizing her importance in the research. Cheyenne starts to obsess over the fire magic and dreams of casting a fireball. His father starts to see a side of his son he didn't know existed. Cheyenne reflects on how, even in tough times, something good can come from it. That day marked the beginning of his true love for magic and his real research into it. With his dad's help, he kept trying the experiment with the fire, despite the flames constantly burning his hand, with Gawain always ready to put them out. As Cheyenne continues, he notices the temperature stays the same, the smoke is gray, and the flames are blue. He asks his dad to increase the fire level. In the next attempt, he slightly reduces the magic's intensity and focuses hard until he's exhausted. Gawain suggests taking a break, so they go to prepare a hot drink when Rose shows up, curious about the experiment. Cheyenne promises to explain later, as he can't do it without his dad's support. Rose comments that it's nice to see Gawain supporting his son. Cheyenne also thanks Rose for being so kind to him after he defeated the goblin, making him feel happy. Rose says she should be the one thanking him, as Cheyenne saved everyone. Rose then asks about Marie, since the girl is always by Cheyenne's side. They find Marie training intensely with a wooden sword. Rose thinks it's because of the goblin attack, but says Cheyenne should always be there for his sister, as she surely expects that from him. Meanwhile, Marie is lost in thoughts about the goblin attack, but shakes her head to focus on her training. Later, Cheyenne analyzes his magic progress. The more magic gathered, the bigger the flame. The more magic used, the stronger the fire. He discovers that heat sources can also ignite mana, even if they're not fire. If you touch the magically charged fire, it burns your hand, staying red. And even if you wear gloves, the magic still works, meaning you'll burn your hand anyway if you touch the fire. After gathering all the info, Cheyenne admits that so far, everything seems too dangerous and pointless. Gawain agrees, saying controlling fire is still far out of reach. Cheyenne jokes it would be awesome if he could just keep a magic orb floating like the traps do. Marie overhears and easily does it herself. Cheyenne nearly loses his mind, while Marie explains she just copied what Cheyenne said. Rose joins in, showing she can do it too, and the girls team up to give Cheyenne tips on how to do the same. But Cheyenne finally figures out that he doesn't need to release all the magic at once and successfully gets the orb to float in the air. Later, he practices again, forgetting the fire and launching a magic orb that explodes in the sky, impressing the crowd. Cheyenne feels proud, though he knows it's not anything big yet, but it's proof his dream magic can actually. A month after the goblin attack, the season changes and Cheyenne keeps pushing himself. He walks through the back of the house, thinking he needs to control magic better, but every time he tries to give it an order, his mana depletes, suggesting there's something he's still missing. As he walks to the front of the house, he sees Marie practicing with her sword. She drops it, her hand injured. Gawain tells her to stop, but Marie insists on continuing, quoting their dad's advice about getting stronger through practice. Cheyenne agrees, but when she ignores him, he calls her out. Realizing she pushed herself too hard, Marie walks away, head down. Cheyenne feels bad, and Gawain reassures him she's just a bit stressed. Later, during tea, Cheyenne talks about his new focus, lightning magic. He's hit a wall with fire magic, so he's curious if any animal or plant can create electricity. His dad mentions hearing from Grast about a powerful lightning-like phenomenon, which leads them to head to Istria. Cheyenne tries to convince Marie to join, but she's too busy and stays behind, pretending everything's fine, though she's sad once alone. In Istria, Cheyenne and Gawain meet Grast, who thinks they're talking about lightning ore. It's common but hard to transport because it's dangerous. Cheyenne wonders if the ore is a mineral that discharges electricity. He also asks Grast about trees with white, sticky sap, wishing they had rubber trees for insulation, but Grast says no. Cheyenne then asks about mica, a mineral used for electrical insulation. Grast shows him a crystal called paper crystal, which Cheyenne realizes might work similarly to mica, but he's unsure how to use it. Grast is curious what Cheyenne's planning, but Gawain says his son often shows wisdom beyond his years. Cheyenne asks for a bigger piece of the crystal, and Grast says it'll cost 4,000 Rome, a lot of money for a family. Grast jokes about Gawain being a soft dad, and they head home with the lightning ore. Emma is there, curious about Cheyenne's experiments, and asks about Marie, who's still training alone. Cheyenne gathered mana in his hand and launched a magical orb at the ore, causing it to explode. Gawain tried to console his son, reminding him that he'd failed a lot before mastering fire magic. But Cheyenne wasn't upset. In fact, he started laughing like a maniac, calling the experiment a success. When the magical orb approached the lightning ore, it didn't catch fire. Instead, it sparked intensely, showing that mana could do more than just start fires. It could mimic and amplify other phenomena. Back in his room, Cheyenne thought about how to convert magic into electricity without it being repelled, like with the orb earlier. He tried again, commanding a floating orb to turn into an electrical source, but it vanished. That's when he realized he didn't need to release magic in a circular shape. He then made other magical sources in different forms. Excited to share his discovery, Cheyenne ran to Marie's room, but she wasn't there. Instead, he found her bandages on the bed. Cheyenne rushed through the forest to find her. Near the river, he saw her practicing with a wooden sword, but she broke it against a tree. Remembering Rose's advice to always be there for his sister, Cheyenne apologized for trying to stop her from training, realizing he was wrong, especially since she always encouraged him to practice magic. Marie assured him it wasn't a big deal, but admitted she'd wondered why her brother wasn't there. She told him it wasn't about him, but about her own feelings. She'd always been the eldest, the protector, and it hurt to see Cheyenne take that role, even if just for a moment. Marie confided that she felt weak after the goblin attack, especially since she was too scared to act and would have probably died without Cheyenne's help. She was angry with herself for not reacting the way she thought she could. Cheyenne asked if she hated him, but she quickly said no. She loved him. Yesterday, today, always. She hated herself for not being as strong as he was. Marie cried, feeling like she wasn't strong enough to protect anyone. Cheyenne, realizing how she felt, stepped closer and hugged her, apologizing for not noticing sooner. Marie also apologized for her actions. Cheyenne told her to always speak up when something was bothering her. As they hugged, a magical aura surrounded them both. Cheyenne reflected on how, whether you're a child or an adult, everyone just wants to survive. It was one of the things he learned after reincarnating in this new world. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next video. See you next time.
The next day, Rose stood nearby, watching with curiosity and a little confusion as Mary clung tightly to Cheyenne. Ever since their heartfelt conversation by the river, Mary hadn't left his side. It was like she couldn't bear to be away from him. Eventually, Cheyenne turned to her and gently asked if she could step back a little. Mary's face dropped. She asked why, sounding a little hurt. Cheyenne explained that he needed space to test his magic. Mary hesitated, then asked if she was getting in his way. He quickly reassured her that she wasn't, he just needed a bit more room. Even though she wasn't happy about it, Mary stepped aside. With some distance between them, Sion began his next magic experiment. He found out that he could shape his magical energy into any form he wanted. But there was a catch. When he spread it out too much, it became weaker and less effective. Realizing this, he changed his approach and focused on making the energy smaller and denser. When he sparked it, the condensed energy exploded with a powerful burst of magic. Both his father and Mary were stunned by the unexpected power. Even Sion was surprised. This was beyond what he had imagined. Excited by his discovery, he decided to name the new spell Flare. It was a big step forward in his magic. Feeling motivated, he turned his attention to the lightning stone, trying to interact with it. But nothing happened. His magic still wasn't strong enough to trigger any reaction. Frustrated but not discouraged, Sion decided to push his limits. He gathered a larger amount of energy and sent it straight into the lightning stone. This time, an explosion erupted, blasting him off his feet. Mary and Rose ran to him, their faces filled with panic. Sion, brushing off the dust, assured them he was fine. Mary, still shaken, said she had expected the lightning to shoot in the opposite direction, not bounce back at him. Sion explained that it was normal. Lightning tends to return to its source. Even though the experiment didn't go as planned, Sion could feel he was close to discovering something important. He wasn't sure what yet, but he knew magic had endless possibilities. He also realized that if he wanted to improve, he needed to think outside the box. As he reflected on everything so far, a thought crossed his mind. Had things been going too smoothly? It almost felt like this world had brought him here just to create magic. That doubt lingered in his mind. Just then, his father returned, bringing along his friend Glass. They sat at the table, but something felt off. Glass looked tense and worried. Breaking the silence, Sion's father turned to him and asked if he remembered how he had extracted the lightning ore. Sion nodded. Of course, he remembered. His father then pointed at Glass and explained that he had used Sion's method to extract lightning ore, something that was supposed to be impossible. Looking guilty, Glass confessed. He had taken the technique he learned from Sion and tried to turn it into a business. Without telling anyone, he had started smuggling the ore, hoping to make a fortune. Now he was here to admit his mistake. Glass was surprised when Sion stayed calm and said he didn't see a problem with what he had done. Still shocked by his reaction, Glass insisted that he had used Sion's idea for personal gain without permission. But Sion just shrugged it off, showing no signs of anger. At that point, Sion's father stepped in, saying the issue was bigger than just Glass feeling guilty about making money. He explained that when they checked Glass's warehouse, they found that the lightning stones were releasing huge amounts of energy uncontrollably, making them too dangerous to store. Glass went into more detail, saying that while people initially bought the stones, the sudden energy discharges caused sparks and even small explosions. Complaints started pouring in, and sales dropped fast. Now, the warehouse was full of unstable stones that no one wanted. Frustrated, Sion's father didn't know what to do next. Desperate, Glass turned to Sion and begged him to find a way to make the stones safe and useful. If he couldn't fix the problem within 3 days, he would have to refund all his customers, which would bankrupt him and cost him everything. Holding on to hope, Glass called Sion the genius, convinced he could figure something out. Sion's father looked at his friend with sympathy, but Sion just stood there, lost in thought. Glass, growing more nervous by the second, feared Sion might refuse to help. But after a moment, Sion finally agreed to try. Glass was relieved, but Sion quickly warned him not to get his hopes up. There was no guarantee he'd succeed. Then, stepping up to the lightning stones, Sion studied them carefully before asking why they were arranged in that way. Glass explained that when the stones were placed too close together, energy would suddenly discharge. To prove his point, he moved 2 stones near each other. Instantly, a sharp spark shot out between them. Sion observed closely, thinking through the possibilities. Then Glass introduced a stone that had been made by melting lightning ore together. Sion asked if this melted stone would also spark when placed near another. Glass told him to test it. Sion pressed 2 of the melted stones together. Nothing happened. That was it. Sion realized that melting the ore changed its properties. He asked Glass at what point the energy stopped discharging. Glass explained that the stones still held some energy when they were broken, but it completely disappeared after melting. Understanding the process now, Sion nodded. He took out his lighter and asked his father if he could try something. Trusting his son, His father gave him the go-ahead. Sion then used his flare spell, summoning a small but controlled flame. Glass was stunned. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. But Sion didn't make a big deal out of it. He just told Glass to focus. Still, Glass couldn't ignore what had just happened. He demanded to know how Sion had created fire from his hand. Sion simply replied, "It's magic." Then, looking at his father, he silently asked for permission to explain more. His father nodded, showing that he trusted Glass. Glass, still trying to process everything, turned to Sion's father and asked if he had always known about Sion's magic. His father confirmed it. Shaking his head in disbelief, Glass struggled to wrap his mind around it. But after a moment, he admitted that seeing it for himself had changed his perspective. Now, he truly believed in magic. With a new idea in mind, Glass looked at Sion and wondered, if they used his magical fire to melt the lightning stone, would the result be different? Sion was super excited about the experiment. He wasn't sure if it would work, but he really wanted to find out. Glass agreed to test it, warning that it would take about an hour. He suggested they go for a walk, but Sion was too eager to leave. The others were just as curious, so they all stayed. After an hour of hard work, Glass finally finished reshaping the lightning stone. Everyone held their breath as he brought two of the stones together. Sparks flew. The magical fire had really changed the stone. Sion was thrilled, and the group cheered at their success. Feeling confident, Sion named the new material Iron Lightning and was sure it would be a hit. Excited, they got straight to work, making Iron Lightning panels, lamps, and magical lighters. They worked non-stop for 3 days, creating all sorts of new items. When they finally finished, the feeling was incredible. Sion's father was proud, and even Marie praised him. He had worried she might be jealous, but she was happy for him. Glass, amazed by Sion's ideas, thanked him and admitted he had no idea how Sion came up with such brilliant stuff. It seemed like Glass wanted to say something important, but before he could, Sion's father changed the subject. Glass apologized, but Sion couldn't shake the feeling that he was holding something back. Before leaving, Glass told Sion he'd always be there if he needed help. Marie, curious, asked what he meant, but Glass only smiled, hinting that he had an idea that could change everything for Sion. His words stayed in Sion's mind long after he left. As expected, the lightning lamps and magical lighters became an instant hit, selling out quickly and making Sion a lot of money. But he wasn't done experimenting yet. He wanted to take things even further. One day, he set up a simple test. He lit a candle with magical fire and covered it with a glass lid. Normal fire would go out without oxygen, but would magical fire? Marie guessed it would keep burning, while Rose thought it would go out. After a few moments, Sion lifted the lid. The magical flame was still there. Marie cheered, teasing Rose for being wrong, but Sion was more interested in what it meant. Magical fire didn't need oxygen to survive. That was a big discovery. When Rose asked what it meant, Sion explained that magical energy could change natural elements, making them immune to things like air. While this didn't have an obvious use yet, it proved that magical fire and regular fire were completely different. Excited, Sion wanted to test something else. He summoned a small magical flame and asked Marie to add just a little bit of her magic to it. The moment her energy touched the flame, it expanded suddenly, releasing a strong burst of energy that sent Marie stumbling backward. Panicked, Sion ran to her. Marie, still on the ground, reassured him she was fine, just startled. Then she gave him a suspicious look and asked if he had expected that to happen. Sion quickly shook his head. He had only thought the flame would grow stronger, not react so dramatically. Marie was confused. She had barely used any magic, so why did it cause such a big reaction? Sion thought hard. Something wasn't adding up. A small amount of magic shouldn't have caused such a powerful effect. He decided to test it again with a lightning stone. This time, nothing unusual happened. That's when it hit him. He finally understood. Rose, still confused, asked if magic wasn't the only factor. Sion nodded excitedly. It was magic, but there was something more to it. He explained that magical energy didn't just float on its own. It reacted with the air around it. He remembered feeling slight wind resistance when using lightning magic. Since magical fire burned without oxygen, it meant magical energy could amplify natural forces rather than just being a separate thing. Realizing how huge this was, Sion let out his usual goofy laugh. Mary and Rose, finally getting it, shared in his excitement. Then, Sion revealed something special. Glass had made him a pair of gloves from leather and paper crystal, designed to safely handle magical energy. Wearing the gloves, Sion tried another experiment. He created a small fire and controlled its energy, producing a steady and powerful flame. Then, he switched to lightning magic and fired a sharp, concentrated bolt of electricity. He stood tall, full of confidence, and declared that he had finally done it. His father, watching from a distance, was speechless. Mary ran up to him, eyes wide with excitement, calling it the most amazing thing she had ever seen. The emotions hit Sion all at once. He had worked so hard, and now it was paying off. Tears welled up in his eyes. Mary and Rose rushed to comfort him, while his parents and Glass watched with pride. They all knew Sion was something special. That night, when the house was quiet, Sion had a strange feeling. He overheard his parents and Glass talking in hushed voices. Curious, he moved closer to listen. Glass spoke first, saying that Sion's magic was incredible and could become something truly extraordinary. His father responded with a serious tone, saying Sion was smart enough not to reveal his abilities to just anyone. His mother agreed, but reminded them that he was still just a child. There was a long pause before his father sighed. He admitted that things were getting out of his control. Sion was too sharp. He wouldn't be able to stop him from chasing his discoveries. Then he said something that made Sion's heart stop. They had been entrusted with him. Sion's mind raced. Entrusted with me. Glass nodded solemnly and confirmed what Sion feared. It seemed Sion was adopted. The truth hit him like a thunderclap. Was he really not related to his family by blood? The next day, Sion spent his time practicing his aim, trying out a new magic technique he had just come up with the day before. Marie and Rose watched from the side, totally impressed by how fast he was improving. Rose pointed out that his accuracy had gotten way better. He could now hit long-distance targets with ease. Sion nodded, admitting he was getting the hang of it and thanking them for their support. Marie, always cheerful, grinned and reassured him that as his big sister, it was only natural for her to help out. That's when a random thought hit Sion out of nowhere, one that completely threw him off. He suddenly remembered something he'd heard before. He and Marie weren't actually blood. That changed everything. Technically, since they were just step-siblings, they could get married. The idea made his face heat up, and when Marie noticed him acting weird and asked if something was wrong, he quickly shook it off, wondering why on earth that thought even crossed his mind. Later that night, Sion couldn't stop thinking about it. His brain felt like it was overheating, so he decided to focus on something else: his magic. Determined to level up his skills, he started experimenting with a technique he called synergistic magic, which boosted magical energy by combining different elements. His test led to some pretty cool discoveries. Mixing synergistic magic with flare created twin flare, an insanely powerful version of flare. Combining it with bolt resulted in line volt, a stronger version of bolt. When flare's energy reacted with magic, it produced bomb flare. Adding an extra energy burst turned it into double bomb flare. But to his surprise, combining flare with flare, or bolt with bolt, didn't do anything special. The next day, Sion headed to the river, where Rose curiously asked what he was up to. Marie, already knowing how he operated, confidently guessed he was about to try another magic experiment. As expected, Sion attempted something new, channeling magic into the water. At first, nothing happened, leaving both Marie and Rose confused. He tried again, and this time a small magic orb briefly appeared in the water before disappearing. Sion had no idea what had just happened. Marie, just as puzzled, sighed and said she was thinking the same thing. Rose, eager for answers, pushed him to explain his thought process. Sion explained that from their past experiments, magic usually behaved like air when released. So, he was curious about how it would act in water. Marie, still doubtful, pointed out that it didn't look any different. Rose agreed, It didn't seem like anything had changed. But Sion wasn't convinced. He noticed that the magic floated and met some resistance, meaning something had to be different. Thinking it over, he realized that when magic moved from air to water or vice versa, nothing major happened. Unlike fire and lightning, water didn't seem to create strong magical reactions. Rose sighed, recognizing Sion's deep in thought expression. He was at it again. Marie just chuckled, used to him overthinking things. Determined to try something else, Sion focused his magic again. This time, tiny water droplets lifted for a moment before vanishing. Marie's eyes widened. She was sure the water had moved. Rose hesitated, unsure if it was real or just her imagination. Sion, however, was sure of it. Excitedly, he explained that by channeling magic into the water, he had actually managed to lift it. This meant magic could interact with water after all. Marie, realizing what this meant, excitedly called it a huge discovery. If magic could affect water, Sion wouldn't be limited to just fire and lightning. He might even be able to use water magic. Rose agreed, saying this opened up a lot of new possibilities for him. Sion nodded, understanding how important this was, but he also admitted that, for now, the effect was weak and not very useful. The best potential use, he thought, would be controlling the water in the air. Excited to try, he turned to Marie and Rose, asking them to watch closely. He focused hard, trying to gather water from the air around him, but nothing happened. Confused, he admitted he could only feel a slight dampness on his hand. Not exactly the big breakthrough he was hoping for. Marie and Rose, still struggling to understand what he was even trying to do, just looked at him, completely lost. Sion focused all his mana into a tiny sphere, and this time it turned completely into water. Marie got so excited that she grabbed him and started shaking him, demanding to know where the water came from. Sion tried to explain, but she was shaking him so much that he could barely get a word out. Rose quickly told Marie to calm down, finally giving Sion a chance to speak. He said he spread a thin layer of magic over a large area of air to collect water, which seemed to use less mana than pulling it directly from a river. That's probably why he managed to create water without using extra magical energy. Still hyped, Marie asked what he would name this new magic. Without thinking too much, Sion decided to call it Aqua. Later, after hearing his explanation, Marie and Rose tried it themselves and managed to recreate the spell. They were so amazed by the results that when the water bubble finally popped, soaking them completely, they just burst into laughter. Marie cheerfully waved Sion over, and as he watched her, he realized something. He had now developed 3 different elemental magics. Maybe he was reaching a new level of power. Later, while riding in a carriage with his parents, Marie and Rose, Sion thought about how it was probably time to refine his abilities even further. Hours later, Grass took the kids to the Adventurers Guild, explaining that they needed to register before taking on monster hunting missions. Sion thought that the only way to truly test his magic against real threats was by going on these dangerous missions. But Grass reminded them that they didn't have to decide right away. This was a serious step. Marie didn't want to keep running away from tough decisions. She wanted to become stronger as soon as possible to protect her family. Rose felt the same. There was no way she'd back down. Seeing their determination, Grass decided it was time to go inside and sort things out. Before they entered, Sion asked Grass to keep this secret from his father. Grass just chuckled and agreed. Inside, Grass approached the counter, introducing himself as a platinum rank adventurer and requesting to register the 3 kids. But before the process could continue, a familiar figure arrived. Gawain. Gawain wasn't exactly thrilled to find his kids at the Adventurers Guild. His face remained stern as he walked over, but instead of stopping them, he pulled out his adventurer's badge, a diamond rank one no less, and personally recommended them. The receptionist was so shocked that she almost screamed, drawing attention from everyone in the guild. A diamond rank adventurer was a rare sight, but Gawain remained completely unfazed, ignoring the stares. With their registration complete, he told the kids to pick a mission, because they'd have a serious talk about this later. After leaving the guild, the first thing they had to do was apologize to Gawain for going behind his back. Well, at least they tried. He had already figured out something was up. Marie had been avoiding eye contact with their parents, which was a dead giveaway. Eventually, Marie confessed and apologized. Gawain sighed, disappointed. But what surprised him more was that Sion had attempted something this reckless without telling his own father. Embarrassed, Sion had no excuse. Grast, however, stepped in, saying the kids had their reasons. Gawain shot him a look. Really? He found it ironic that Grast was giving him a moral lecture after all the questionable things he'd done in the past. That shut Grast up real quick. Still, Gawain was curious. Why were the kids so eager to take on these missions? Once they explained, he realized this wasn't just childish mischief. They actually had a goal in mind. Since they had chosen to seek out a trustworthy adult for guidance, Gawain acknowledged their responsibility. Even though he wasn't around, he knew they would be in safe hands. However, no matter how careful they were, the world was unpredictable. So, next time, he told them to talk to him first. It was always safer to have two high-ranking adventurers protecting them. Sion completely understood what his father meant, but before he could say anything, Gawain made it clear. He wasn't just giving them advice. He was joining them on their first mission. The kids' faces lit up with excitement. Hours later, deep in the forest where their mission took place, Grast stayed behind to protect the kids, while Gawain took the lead. A group of kobolds appeared, but they were no match for Gawain. With swift and precise sword strikes, he took them all down in seconds. The kids could only watch in awe, so this was the strength of a diamond rank adventurer. Grast remarked that Gawain was as monstrously strong as ever, while Cheyenne was stunned. His father was even more powerful than he had thought. Gawain then told the children it was their turn to fight the kobolds they were hunting, and they should be arriving any minute. Just as he said that, the kobolds appeared. Gawain explained that since they were weaker than goblins, they were the perfect opponents for the kids' first battle. Hearing the word goblin immediately triggered memories from Marie, but she quickly pulled herself together. The kobolds attacked, and Gawain ordered Marie and Rose to engage, while Cheyenne stayed in the rear since the enemies had no long-range attacks. He then launched a flame bomb, creating a huge explosion and taking out several monsters. But before he could react, a kobold charged at him. Marie rushed in and blocked the attack just in time. With his mana recovered, Cheyenne unleashed a lined ray while Marie and Rose continued fighting up close. Though exhausted, they eventually took down all the kobolds, except one. Before it could catch the girls off guard, Cheyenne swiftly used twin flames to finish it off. Marie admitted she only had the courage to fight because her brother was there, which gave her more confidence. Hearing this, Cheyenne realized that no matter their blood relation, Marianne would always think of him as family, and that was enough for him. Gawain praised their efforts, but then surprised them by announcing they would now raid the kobolds' den. The children were stunned. They hadn't expected to face so many monsters on their first adventure. Pushing through exhaustion, they fought fiercely inside the den. It was an intense battle, but in the end, victory was theirs. While Gawain and Grast collected loot, the kids sat down to rest. That's when Cheyenne noticed something unusual deeper inside. Curious, they ventured in and found a fairy trapped in a cage. Without hesitation, Cheyenne opened it, and the fairy flew free, mesmerizing them with its beauty. That night, Gawain returned home with his children. Emma immediately noticed their injuries, figured out what had happened, and whacked Gawain with a candlestick in front of them. She then turned to her sons, demanding an explanation. Cheyenne and Marie nervously admitted they had gone monster hunting, but Emma revealed Gawain had already told her beforehand. Confused, Cheyenne asked why his father still got hit. Emma explained that it wasn't normal for kids to come home covered in wounds, and Gawain had gone too far by exposing them to so many kobolds. As a mother, she didn't mind them doing what they wanted, as long as they didn't get hurt. That was all she asked. As long as they were safe, she was happy. She then hugged them and they apologized for leaving without telling her. Despite everything, there was no anger in her, just warmth and understanding. Finally, she invited them to take a bath. Later, as Marie and Rose chatted while bathing, Cheyenne sat outside the tub, lost in thought. Over and over, he told himself that they were a family. Remembering all their moments together, he had no doubts. Their bond wasn't by blood, but it was real. Magic existed in this world, but to him, this was the greatest miracle. He was truly happy. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. The next day, facing a tough hobgoblin, the young wizard decided to try something new. He used atmospheric magic to create areas of high and low pressure, wrapping them in a magic membrane to generate a strong windstorm. With this, he unleashed a full-force hurricane on the monster, trapping it in the attack and dealing serious damage. The hobgoblin writhed in pain before eventually taking its last breath. Cheyenne, proud of his new move, decided to call it Breath. The only downside? It took a long time to activate. Still, depending on the situation, it could be useful, even though its main purpose wasn't for attacking. Just then, Marie and Rose arrived, having finished their mission. It had been 2 years since the three of them started hunting monsters. Now, Cheyenne was 10 years old, while the girls were 12. Marie hugged her little brother excitedly, celebrating the fact that she had defeated 20 goblins. Seeing how much she had grown, Cheyenne thought she almost seemed like an adult. After their mission, they headed back to the city. Over time, Cheyenne's ability to sense magical energy had improved a lot, so much that he could now tell how much magic someone had just by looking at them. There was one issue with this, but before he could think too much about it, Rose noticed his distraction and asked if something was wrong. He simply said it was nothing. Even so, he still hadn't found anyone with more magic than Rose and Marie. Marie mentioned that there were more monsters than usual lately, and the guild kept getting more requests for monster hunts. What seemed strange to Rose was that so many goblins had been appearing near the city, when usually it was kobolds in this area. Cheyenne agreed, also pointing out that more homeless people had been gathering in the city. After that, the group stopped by Grass's workshop. Cheyenne asked if the blacksmith was interested in forging some iron lightning, but Grass turned him down. He had been too busy finishing the young wizard's new gauntlets. Cheyenne was surprised, since he had only recently requested them. Grass, on the other hand, commented that the boy went through equipment way too fast. But in a way, that was a good thing. It meant Cheyenne was growing, both as a wizard and an adventurer. While they talked, Grass asked how the kids were doing without him or Gawain around for their adventures. Marie excitedly said they were close to reaching silver rank. Grass was impressed, since no one from their city had ever achieved that before. However, Rose pointed out that both Grass and Gawain had already reached that level when they were younger. The only reason they weren't officially ranked was that they never registered with the Adventurers Guild back then. They still hunted monsters, but in those days, adventurer guilds weren't as common. As Cheyenne put on his new gauntlets, Marie asked what he planned to do when his magic got even stronger, considering he could already use all kinds of spells. As expected, he answered that he wanted to learn even more. Then Marie asked what he would do after that, and Cheyenne didn't know what to say. She reminded him that without him, the city wouldn't have things like lightning lamps, and without his magic, the people might have been wiped out by goblins. In other words, his magic had saved everyone, and he could probably do even more with it in the future. She wasn't trying to tell him what to do, but it was a fact. Magic had the power to change everything, for better or worse, depending on how it was used. Back at home, Cheyenne trained with Gawain. After dodging an attack, he used fire magic to strike back, but Gawain easily deflected it with his sword. Then, Cheyenne switched to lightning magic, making it harder for Gawain to block. However, Gawain managed to dodge the electric blast and close the distance between them, ready to end the fight. But Cheyenne had one last trick up his sleeve. Using magic, he jumped high to create space, then cast Fall, an earth spell that trapped Gawain in the ground. With his father stuck, Cheyenne walked up and patted his shoulder, claiming victory. Gawain admitted he hadn't expected that move. Cheyenne explained that Fall was an atmospheric spell that used air pressure underground to create a trap. Still, it was exhausting to move while casting magic, so he needed to train his body to handle it better. Gawain agreed, pointing out that compared to when Cheyenne first started, he had improved a lot, both physically and in how he used magic in battle. He was especially impressed when the boy used an upgraded version of Breath. However, Cheyenne admitted that he still couldn't fully control that spell. it had a tendency to change direction randomly, but that didn't bother him too much because his real dream was to one day be able to fly through the sky. Marie showed up, grumbling about wanting to train as well. Gawain allowed her 5 minutes to spar with him, and she eagerly jumped in, showing impressive sword skills for her age. Cheyenne was completely shocked by how fast and skilled she had become. However, despite her progress, she still couldn't defeat their father. The moment she let her guard down, Gawain landed a solid hit. Frustrated, she complained about always losing, especially since Cheyenne kept winning against their father. Gawain, amused, reminded her to be patient, assuring her that one day she would reach that level. As Marie stepped away, Cheyenne asked Gawain how her mana was holding up during training. Gawain reassured him that even at 12, her abilities were already top tier among swordsmen. However, what truly made her stand out was her physical strength, which was comparable to that of an adult, something highly unusual. Cheyenne wondered if her strength was connected to her magical energy, but Gawain admitted he wasn't sure. Regardless, he believed it wasn't a concern at the moment and advised Cheyenne not to worry. Later, Cheyenne and Marie met up with Rose to assist with pest control due to a shortage of workers in the fields. Rose showed them a box of bugs, and while Cheyenne eagerly accepted the challenge, Marie cringed at the sight of the slimy creatures. Despite her disgust, she still joined in, struggling to pick up the worms with her hands like the other kids. Watching her, Cheyenne realized their father might be right. Marie was still the same, and there was no real reason to be overly concerned. By the time they finished, the sun was setting. Rose announced that the work was done. Marie, exhausted, checked her box and found only 5 worms, while Cheyenne and Rose had collected dozens. Determined, she promised to do better next time and even suggested turning it into a competition. Before they could continue, the sky darkened unnaturally fast. A strange magical reaction pulsed through the air, and moments later, rain started pouring heavily. Rose quickly urged them to run to her house. Cheyenne took the lead, but just as he reached the porch, he heard a thud behind him. Turning around, he saw Marie collapsed on the ground. Panic surged through him as he rushed to her side. They carried her inside Rose's house and laid her on a bed. Cheyenne's heart pounded. She felt ice cold. Rose attempted to say something, but before she could finish, Gollum and Emma burst into the room, their faces filled with worry. Marie's eyes fluttered open slightly, but she remained unresponsive. Rose hesitated before mentioning something she had heard in town. She explained that a mysterious illness, known as lethargy disease, had been spreading in Istria. According to rumors, people suffering from it would suddenly collapse and stop moving, as if they had been switched off. Though they remained conscious, they did not respond and had a vacant look in their eyes. Emma's face turned pale as she desperately asked if there was a cure. Rose shook her head, explaining that she had never heard of anyone recovering from it. Since the cause was unknown, there was no known treatment. Emma broke down in tears upon hearing this. Cheyenne clenched his fists, struggling to hold back his own emotions. Gawain, keeping his composure, made a decision. They needed to take Marie to a doctor in Istria immediately. He instructed Emma to prepare Marie while Cheyenne was to return home with her. However, Cheyenne refused. He insisted on coming along, arguing that it would be even riskier for Gawain to protect Marie alone. He reminded his father that he had already proven himself capable of handling fights. After a moment of hesitation, Gawain reconsidered and allowed him to come. The carriage departed under the raging storm. As they rode, Gawain kept his eyes on the road, while Che sat beside Marie, watching over her. His mind raced. No matter what, he would get her to Istria safely. Suddenly, a red glow flickered in the sky. Cheyenne's eyes widened, and he tried to alert his father. However, Gawain didn't react, unable to see the strange light. That was when Cheyenne realized it was some kind of magical illusion. Before he could think further, a pack of blood wolves emerged from the darkness, their glowing red eyes locked onto the carriage, their hunger evident. These creatures were drawn to human blood, making them highly dangerous. Gawain continued driving while Cheyenne prepared to face the threat. He quickly assessed his options. Fire and lightning were useless in this storm, leaving him with breath and aqua. Using aqua, he gathered rainwater, shaped it into sharp bullets, and, with a burst of breath, launched them at the wolves. The shots struck their targets, knocking down several of the beasts. Despite his efforts, there were too many of them. Even Gawain had to fend off some that got too close to the front. Then, just as Cheyenne began to feel overwhelmed, something unexpected happened. The blood wolves abruptly stopped attacking. Without warning, they turned and fled in the opposite direction, as if terrified of something far worse. A powerful wind howled through the trees. From deep within the forest, a swirling green mist appeared, twisting and shifting as it took shape. Cheyenne's body stiffened, and fear gripped him as the mist transformed into a massive, terrifying creature. His heart pounded as he stumbled back, his instincts screaming at him to run. He called out to his father, but Gawain showed no reaction. Cheyenne's stomach dropped as realization struck. Gawain couldn't see it. The monstrous entity circled the carriage, moving with an eerie, almost playful curiosity. Cheyenne had no idea what it was or how to stop it. Cheyenne fired an aqua bullet straight at the ghostly creature, but the attack passed through it without causing any harm. The creature remained unaffected and extended its massive, eerie hand toward him. A chill ran down Cheyenne's spine as he realized he might die again, powerless against this unknown monster. Suddenly, he recalled the tactic he had used against the goblin. Acting quickly, he grabbed one of the phantom's fingers. The moment he made contact, a surge of purifying energy burst through the creature, burning its entire arm away. The phantom let out a furious screech and, enraged by the attack, turned its focus to Gawain. It flew toward him, seeking revenge. As it approached the lightning lamp on the carriage, something unexpected happened. The phantom recoiled in agony, its body twisting and screaming as the light seemed to burn it. Cheyenne saw an opportunity and immediately leapt toward the weakened creature. Noticing this, Gawain pulled the reins hard, bringing the carriage to a sudden stop. With all his strength, Cheyenne reached out and touched the phantom again, releasing a powerful surge of purification energy. This time, the creature could not withstand the attack and disintegrated completely. However, with the battle over, Cheyenne now faced another danger. He was falling from a great height with no way to break his fall. Just before he hit the ground, strong arms caught him. As they continued their journey, he reflected on the encounter. He had never seen a creature like that before and wanted to understand what it was. Cheyenne was about to remind him that he had not seen the monster at first, but Gawain explained that he had only noticed it once it neared the lightning lamp. Hearing this, Cheyenne paused for a moment and glanced at the lamp, lost in thought. After some time, they arrived in Istria and made their way to Dr. Alphonse's clinic. The building was overcrowded with patients, all suffering from the same strange condition as Marie. Cheyenne hurried inside, eager to find someone who could help his sister. However, even the doctor's assistants were overwhelmed by the sheer number of people in need. One of the assistants, exhausted from attending to so many patients, asked Cheyenne to wait his turn. Frustrated, he protested, saying they had braved a storm to reach the clinic, only to be told to wait. However, Gawain pointed out that everyone was struggling with the same situation, and they had no choice but to be patient. Eventually, Marie was examined by Dr. Alphonse. He carefully checked her eyes and pulse before concluding that she likely had lethargic disease. Cheyenne's heart pounded as he asked if there was a cure. The doctor sighed and admitted that very little was known about the illness. For now, all they could do was care for those affected and hope for the best. Cheyenne refused to accept this answer. Memories of his sister filled his mind. Her laughter, her playful challenges, and the moment before she collapsed. It was unbearable to think that there was no cure. Desperate, he grabbed the doctor by the collar, demanding to know why he could not save his patients. His voice trembled as he pleaded for his sister's life. Despite his desperation, next day Cheyenne and his family decided to stay in Astoria instead of going back to their village. While Marie was resting, Grast showed up. He had let them use his warehouse so Marie could recover. Gawain and Emma apologized for the trouble, but Grast brushed it off. He insisted that helping friends was something he did willingly, especially since they had helped him many times before. Still, he couldn't understand why something so unfair had to happen to such a sweet kid like Marie. After checking in on them, he promised to come back later in the afternoon and left them alone. Gawain apologized again, but Grast shut it down, telling him to stop saying sorry. Instead, Gawain simply thanked him. Later, Rose came to check on her best friend. Hours passed, but no matter how many times Cheyenne called out to his sister, she never responded. Then, Gawain called his son over to meet someone. Cheyenne hoped it was someone who could cure Marie, but his father admitted it wasn't. Cheyenne refused to leave his sister's side. He reminded his father that just 4 days ago, they had fought a monster they could barely see. That same day, there were reports of 10 other attacks, people getting hurt or even killed by something invisible. Gawain was convinced it was the same creature. Since they were the only survivors, Gawain believed Cheyenne had some way to deal with this monster. If he ignored it, more people could die. But Cheyenne didn't care, he just wanted to stay with Marie. Frustrated, Gawain asked if he really thought it was okay to let others die when he had the power to help. The monster was still lurking near their village. Cheyenne argued that it wasn't his problem. He didn't understand why he had to get involved when all he wanted was to be with his sister. Angrily, he asked if his father even cared about Marie. Gawain raised his voice. Of course he cared, she was his beloved daughter. But sitting around doing nothing wouldn't save her. If it could, he'd gladly sell his own life to a demon. The truth was, all he could do was whatever little was in his power. And if Cheyenne helped, he could save so many people. Looking straight into his son's eyes, he asked for his help again. Cheyenne hesitated, remembering something Marie had once told him, that magic could be used for many things, both good and bad. It wasn't easy, but there were endless possibilities, and only he had the power to use it to save others. Thinking about that, he realized what Marie would say if she were awake. She'd tell him to stop wasting time and save as many people as he could. And not just say it, she'd drag him along if she had to. So, to honor her, Cheyenne finally agreed to help. But just as he made that decision, something felt off. Looking at Marie, he suddenly noticed something strange. Remembering the last time they held hands, he realized there was no magical energy coming from her anymore. His heart sank. Panicked, he ran out of the warehouse, calling for his mother to take care of Marie. As he ran, he realized something terrible. He had been with his sister for 4 days, but hadn't noticed a crucial detail. Later, he took his father to a clinic. There, he found that everyone suffering from lethargy had no trace of magical energy. In fact, no one in the clinic had any magic left. Even in the city, where he usually sensed magic everywhere, there was none. This made him suspect that all the affected people originally had magic in their bodies. If that was true, then maybe magic itself was the key to a cure, something medicine hadn't been able to find. And maybe, just maybe, Cheyenne himself could be the one to solve this mystery. Gawain agreed. Everything that had happened over the past few days seemed connected, from the magic to their family's situation. If that was the case, there was someone Cheyenne needed to meet. So his father led him to an extravagant throne room. The overwhelming decorations made the boy uneasy, as if the very room itself was pressing down on him. As soon as Gawain and Cheyenne arrived at the grand hall, Gawain knelt before Lord Balf, apologizing for the unexpected visit. Then, he introduced his son to the nobleman. Balf's piercing gaze made Cheyenne uncomfortable, and the boy felt a chill run down his spine. Ignoring his reaction, Gawain quickly got to the point, suggesting the use of lightning lanterns to track the invisible monsters. At first, Balf, who looked intimidating, simply snapped. He started ranting about how everything had gone downhill since he became the governor of Astoria. The cases of lethargy kept increasing, and now invisible monsters? He didn't sign up for this. If he could, he'd dump all this responsibility onto his subordinates. But Gawain kept his cool, pointing out that this was an emergency and neglecting the situation would only make things worse. Realizing he had no choice, Balf sighed in frustration and admitted that the Merchants Guild had tried to hoard the lightning lamps. However, he had managed to secure a batch for the guards. Gawain applauded him, calling him efficient as always. Balf just laughed like a madman, saying that flattery wouldn't get them anywhere. Meanwhile, Cheyenne stood there, completely bewildered by how bizarre the whole exchange was. Gawain then explained his theory. The invisible monster and the cases of lethargy were both linked to magic. Taking the chance, Balf turned to Cheyenne and revealed that his father had already told him everything about the boy's abilities. Apparently, Cheyenne was a young mage who could manipulate magical energy, meaning he might be able to help solve this crisis. Balfi asked if they could gather other mages to fight the monster, but Cheyenne shook his head. Learning magic took time, and most of the gifted ones had already fallen victim to lethargy. To make matters worse, Balf revealed that the doctors had made little progress in understanding the disease. At this point, he was desperate for answers and wanted to know if Cheyenne had any ideas. That's when Cheyenne's confidence kicked in. He had a plan. The Lord's eyes lit up with hope. Cheyenne explained that in a healthy body, magical energy naturally replenishes during rest. But those suffering from lethargy had lost their mana entirely. Something was blocking their recovery. The solution? He could try donating his own mana to the affected patients. Belf hesitated. That sounded dangerous, but if they did nothing, people would keep suffering. Cheyenne, fully aware of the risks, declared that idealistic words wouldn't save anyone. He was willing to do whatever it took to help his sister. He suggested starting with those who had no chance of survival, using monsters as test subjects first. Impressed, Belfay granted him permission to carry out the experiments. He even provided experts in monster medicine and soldiers to ensure everything went smoothly. Cheyenne found it odd that the Duke was giving so much power to a mere child, but there was no turning back now. Soon after, he met his research team. The first was Cole Leister, assistant to the renowned Dr. Alphonse. Cole clearly wasn't thrilled about working with a kid and saw it as a waste of time, but orders were orders. Before he could say anything else, a woman intervened, scolding him for his arrogance. Her name was Rafina Spiro, a knight and the ruler of Zep and Last. Despite her grand titles, she fumbled when her visor fell off, giving Cole the perfect chance to tease her. Rafina, flustered but determined, assured them she was a capable knight, having been personally recognized by the monarch. Then there was Bridget Kite, who introduced herself so quietly that no one could hear her at first. Eventually, she managed to say she was an expert on monsters. With introductions done, Cheyenne made it clear that this mission was no joke. They had very little information to work with, and failure wasn't an option. Outside, he demonstrated his magic, summoning a bolt of lightning that left everyone stunned. When Cole asked how this related to curing lethargy, Cheyenne explained that magic, when overused, could lead to extreme exhaustion, just like the symptoms of the disease. This revelation made Cole rethink his stance on the whole situation. As the team set out for their first experiment, Rufina struggled with the weight of her armor, falling behind. Cole had other duties at the clinic, so the rest moved forward. Bridget, curious about the invisible monster, asked if it was connected to lethargy. Cheyenne explained that magical energy could be dangerous if not handled correctly. He had used it against monsters before, but when they reacted with their own mana, it burned them from the inside out. This made him wonder if controlled energy transfer could be the cure. But they needed test subjects, ones with mana. When Cheyenne was about to discuss the invisible monster, Bridget freaked out, grabbing him by the collar, demanding to know what it looked like. She had an obsession with specters. Before they could continue, a monster appeared in their path. Cheyenne felt uneasy, but Bridget's eyes sparkled with excitement. Rafina, despite her heavy armor, rushed forward. Then, as if fed up, she shed her metal plating and crushed it with brute force, proving she was more than just a noble's daughter. She was a true warrior. As the battle began, Cheyenne cast a lightning spell, but he missed. He quickly realized something strange. His recharge time was much faster than usual. Meanwhile, Rafina struck the ground so hard that dust flew everywhere. The goblin used the cover to launch a surprise attack, slamming into Rafina and sending her flying into a tree. As she rebounded, Cheyenne acted fast, casting a combo spell, water and lightning. The rain amplified the electric current, stunning the monster long enough for Rafina to drive her sword into its neck, finishing it off. Afterward, Rafina bragged about landing the final blow, but Cheyenne reminded her that they needed live test subjects. Bridget asked if she had forgotten their mission, and he sighed. Yeah, she probably had. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. The next morning, Rose served tea to Sion as he asked about his mother. She explained that she was staying with Mary to take care of her. After that, Rose brought up Sion's research on lethargy disease and offered to help. However, Sion pointed out that she was already busy with household duties, and frequent trips to Australia would be too much for her. Rose agreed, but still felt frustrated that she couldn't do anything for Mary. Cheyenne reassured her that her presence at home, helping his mother, was already a great help. Meanwhile, he left for Astria with Cole, unsure of where they were headed. Cole eventually told him they were going to the clinic, following orders from the Duke. He believed the visit might reveal important clues about treating lethargy disease. At the clinic, they found patients with milder symptoms. While observing one of them, Sion noticed faint magical energy when he touched the patient's hand. It confirmed his suspicion that those affected by the disease were having their energy drained. Earlier, Sion had discussed with Cole the idea of transferring magical energy to the patients. Cole was skeptical, but Sion insisted on trying. When he transferred a small amount of energy to one patient, there was a reaction. The patient moved his hands and opened his eyes. This result intrigued them, but Cheyenne wasn't sure if it was due to his intervention or natural recovery. Cole suggested monitoring the patient and increasing the energy exposure gradually. After discussing their findings with the attending doctor, Cole pulled Cheyenne aside and warned him to keep their discovery secret. The doctors were focused on traditional treatments, and revealing this new method could cause issues. Cheyenne was annoyed by the idea that the medical community might interfere, but he ultimately cared more about helping patients. Cole cautioned him to be more careful about what he shared. Cheyenne laughed, finding it amusing that Cole thought he was reckless when others always called him level-headed. Their conversation took an unexpected turn when Cheyenne complimented Cole's kindness. Embarrassed, Cole dismissed the comment, saying it was just his duty as a doctor. Frustrated by Cheyenne's teasing, he quickly left. That night, Sion sat with his sister, attempting to transfer magical energy to her. Unfortunately, there was no effect. He reminded himself that this was just like learning magic. It would take time. The next day, Sion and his team continued their experiments in the forest, testing magical energy on monsters. During one test, a monster's hands burned after 50 seconds of exposure. They noted the effects and concluded that magical energy reacted differently with monsters than with humans. Bridget observed that Sion's energy seemed to purify them. However, they wouldn't know for sure until they tested it on a human. Ravina, impatient with their discussion, asked if she could finish off the monsters. Once Sion agreed, she quickly defeated them all. Trying to show off afterward, she tripped and fell, claiming there were hidden traps. Sion wasn't convinced. Later, he sat with his sister, reviewing the experiment results with Bridget. Rose approached, carrying a bucket of fish for another test. When Sion used magical energy on a fish for 90 seconds, it remained unaffected. This led him to believe that magical energy purified monsters but did not affect natural creatures like fish. He suspected humans would react differently. Sion hesitated to ask Rose for something, but she already knew. She pointed out that she was the only human unaffected by lethargy and had magical energy, making her the best candidate for an experiment. Without hesitation, she offered to help Mary in any way she could. As the experiment began, Sion instructed her to speak up if anything felt wrong. Rose described a slight warmth but felt fine. After some time, she still felt comfortable. However, remembering how the monster had reacted, Sion hesitated to continue. Rose held his hand, encouraging him to proceed. When he released all the magical energy he could, nothing happened. This confirmed that magical energy affected humans differently than monsters. Rose suggested a longer test, continuous energy transfer over 10 minutes. Cheyenne agreed, preparing for the next phase of their research. As the guards collected the lightning lamps, Sion and his team grew frustrated, knowing they no longer had a way to protect themselves from monsters. Cole questioned whether the monsters would even appear and doubted the lamp's effectiveness. This led to an argument, but he eventually admitted that Sion's research had made progress, unlike the doctors, who still had no cure for the disease. Sion then asked Bridget for updates on monsters in other areas. She informed him that aside from the Wraith monster, there were no new sightings nearby. This surprised him, and she explained that the Wraith had only appeared after the Legri War. When Sion asked about the war, Ravina and Bridget explained that it happened 1,000 years ago, when all nations united against the demons. Some believed Legri was the name of the war's leader, while others thought it was the name of a country that vanished afterward. Meanwhile, the Duke recorded recent dangerous events and updates on their experiments with slumber sickness. After 90 days, patients showed small improvements, such as slight finger movements and blinking. By day 135, they discovered that an excess of magical energy in the body, not its depletion, might be causing the illness. Despite doubts about the Wraith monster's return, the Duke ordered the continued production of lightning lamps as a precaution. On day 201, they learned that magical energy in a person's body could be replaced with another's. By day 209, Sion's magical energy was severely depleted, forcing him to find ways to replenish it. However, no significant progress was made by day 380, or even by day 562. The Wraith monster remained elusive, and no cure had been found. The Duke feared the creature was a remnant of the Legri War, but hoped he was wrong. 2 years passed without a cure, but Sion continued his experiments. A patient's wife expressed gratitude when her husband finally smiled again, giving Sion hope. However, he was visibly exhausted. Cole noticed this and urged him to rest, but Sion insisted he was fine, though it was clear he was struggling. Returning home, Sion was welcomed by Ravina, Bridget, his father, and Grast. They gathered for a meal, but the mood darkened when Sion thought of his sister. His father suggested he take a break, but Sion refused, saying he had only drained his magical energy, not his strength. The family insisted he had worked tirelessly for 2 years and needed rest. Sion reassured them that he understood the importance of pacing himself, but would not stop until he cured his sister. He recalled how he once studied magic without knowing if it even existed, so slumber sickness was not beyond his reach. Even if it took his entire life, he would find a cure. Seeing his determination, his family supported him, realizing he was stronger than they had thought. Later, while Sion sat with his sister, a bright red light flashed outside. Recognizing it from the day the sickness began, he rushed to inform the Duke. Rose insisted on going with him. When they looked up, they saw countless wraith-like monsters filling the sky. The situation had become more dangerous than ever. Jun looks up at the blood-red sky, wondering why the terrifying sight of this night, which hasn't appeared for over 2 years, has returned. As he contemplates, 2 guards patrolling the streets pass by. Suddenly, a ghost appears right in front of them, but they don't see anything. Sion quickly shouts a warning and lunges forward, delivering a powerful punch that sends the ghost flying. Thanks to the nearby thunderlight lanterns, the creature's form becomes visible, causing the guards to nearly wet themselves in fear. Concerned that the townspeople are in danger, Sion rushes to inform the Lord. Despite his eccentric personality, the Lord immediately orders his subordinates to equip thunderlight lanterns in preparation for the impending threat. Hearing this, Sion breathes a sigh of relief and requests to join the efforts. Initially hesitant, the Lord ultimately agrees upon seeing Sion's determination. Sion then heads to the town's defense unit's gathering point, where he meets the arrogant and annoying captain. The captain dismisses the need for thunderlight lanterns, calling it the most ridiculous thing he has ever heard. The soldiers murmur among themselves, mocking the Lord for what they see as another one of his foolish antics. They still don't believe in so-called invisible monsters after all these years and complain that thunderlight lanterns are unnecessary. Why not just use oil lamps or torches? Suddenly, a voice announces that the 75th Royal Knight Squad hasn't been assigned a defense area yet. Recognizing the voice immediately, Sion knows it can only belong to Rafina. As it turns out, the leader of this squad had quit, and Rafina took the opportunity to take charge. Unfortunately, this squad is considered a group of useless misfits, only assigned menial tasks. Coincidentally, the 2 guards Sion saved earlier are part of Rafina's unit. The captain, seeing the so-called losers of the force, dismissively tells them to do whatever they want and not get in the way. Sion doesn't waste time arguing and instead leads the group to the main gate to assess the spirit's movements. He explains that this location is vital for monitoring the enemy from a distance and developing a strategy. Rafina doesn't understand a word, but enthusiastically orders Hui and Depp to stick close. Just then, Sion detects that 5 ghostly creatures have already infiltrated the city. However, if they turn back now, they won't make it in time. Deciding to continue forward, Sion reaches the main gate and immediately uses magic to leap down. But what surprises him the most is how effortlessly he can cast spells. Landing smoothly on the ground, he startles the guards. With no time to explain, Sion unleashes a barrage of fireballs into the darkness. As expected, a small group of ghostly creatures becomes visible in the magical light, terrifying the onlookers. They prepare to charge, but Sion swiftly eradicates them with powerful lightning magic. Rafina's squad finally arrives, allowing him to brief them on the situation. The soldiers, who previously doubted the existence of invisible monsters, are now speechless after witnessing the truth with their own eyes. Feeling an ominous presence, Sion quickly climbs to a high vantage point. His eyes widen in shock as he sees over 100 ghostly entities shrieking and charging toward the city. In this dire situation, he casts a grand fire spell to illuminate all the torches along the main gate. Since these spirits despise the blue flames, he hopes to slow their advance. Additionally, with the area bathed in light, ordinary people can now see the monsters and use torches to fight back. The soldiers are concerned. How can just a handful of them take on such a massive force? But Sion reassures them, saying he has a plan. He's beginning to understand why he was reincarnated into this world, to develop and master magic. As the ghostly horde rushes toward them, Sion and his team vow to protect the townspeople. Channeling magic into both hands, he soars into the air and unleashes a massive fire blast, incinerating the spirits one by one. Not stopping there, he continuously bombards the enemy with fireballs. However, the sheer number of enemies makes Rafina nervous. Rafina grew worried as she grabbed a torch and quickly rushed to assist her teammate. However, before they could fight for long, the weak magical flame on the torch began to flicker and gradually died out. Seeing the situation, the soldier Huyu suddenly had an idea. He smashed an oil lamp with his sword, coating his blade in fuel. When combined with magical fire, the technique allowed Rafina to cut down the monsters with ease. Even the once dismissed soldiers proved their worth in battle. Now, armed with a flaming sword, Rafina charged forward, slicing through the monstrous spirits. Sion, inspired by her determination, unleashed spells in rapid succession, bombarding the enemy like an unrelenting storm. Yet, a lingering question remained in his mind. Despite casting hundreds of spells, his mana reserves showed no signs of depletion. The eerie environment of the night seemed to sustain his energy, much like the mysterious events of 2 years prior when similar creatures had emerged, bringing with them an epidemic of extreme lethargy. Some believed that excessive mana consumption had disrupted the body's natural balance, but there was no time to dwell on theories. Survival was the only priority. Without warning, the spirits changed tactics. They hurled themselves into the torches near the city gates, extinguishing the flames and plunging the battlefield into darkness. Their unexpected intelligence sent a wave of unease through the defenders. Acting swiftly, Sion commanded a retreat before channeling a powerful surge of mana. He absorbed the remnants of nearby fire, compressing them into a massive, swirling inferno. The resulting explosion of flames surged across the battlefield, incinerating countless enemies in an instant. The battlefield fell silent as the smoke cleared, revealing a wasteland of scorched remnants. Though victorious, Sion was left drained from the immense mana expenditure. Yet, the respite was short-lived. More ghostly figures emerged from the shadows, their numbers seemingly endless. The warriors, already exhausted, forced themselves to stand once more. Reinforcements arrived just in time. Grad, a seasoned warrior, led a band of adventurers into the fray, turning the tide of battle. Among them was Brigitte, a young strategist with an obsession for monsters. She quickly directed the warriors to dip their arrows in alcohol and ignite them with magical flames. The enhanced projectiles proved highly effective, rapidly thinning the enemy's ranks. With support from the adventurers, the defenders regained their momentum. The spirits, once overwhelming, were systematically eradicated. The battle neared its conclusion as the final remnants of the ghostly army were cut down. Just as victory seemed certain, the city's captain arrived with his soldiers, accusing the warriors of fabricating the entire battle to cause disorder. Despite the protests of the adventurers, the accusations continued, and the order for mass arrests was given. The soldiers moved in to detain the battle-worn fighters. Before the captain could savor his authority, an unseen force yanked him into the air. A massive, spectral hand materialized, gripping him tightly before a swift motion severed his head from his body. A thick, black mist seeped into the battlefield, enveloping the surroundings in an unnatural chill. From the darkness emerged a lone figure, his silver hair catching the dim light. An overwhelming aura of malevolence radiated from his presence. His expression was unreadable, his gaze piercing through the remaining fighters as the mist curled around him like living shadows. Beyond the battlefield, the night stretched endlessly, the air thick with an unshakable dread. The monstrous figure stood tall, its voice filled with arrogance, as it questioned why humans had gathered before it. To the creature, their presence seemed like admiration, as if they had come to welcome its return. Grast, caught off guard by the eerie confidence, demanded to know its identity. However, the creature showed no concern and instead introduced itself as Ainswolf, a demon that claimed to embody nobility and justice. Its expression carried a disturbing madness, making Sion uneasy. The presence of such a being sent waves of fear through everyone as they struggled to comprehend what kind of demon they were facing. Ainswolf spoke as if it had been forgotten, unable to believe that its name had faded from history over the past 1,000 years. The revelation left Grast in disbelief. How could such a terrifying demon have existed for so long? The answer came soon enough. Ainswolf had been imprisoned for 1,000 years and was now free once more. With a twisted sense of kindness, it declared its intention to kill them all. Sensing the danger, everyone raised their weapons, bracing themselves for battle. But before they could react, Ainswolf merely snapped its fingers, releasing an immense force that sent them all crashing to the ground. Despite the devastating blow, Sion managed to grab his comrades and attempted to escape, but the attack reached them before they could get far. One by one, they collapsed, the battlefield turning into a scene of destruction. Struggling to his feet, Sion realized that their opponent was far too powerful. Defeating it was impossible, yet as much as he wanted to flee, the thought of leaving others behind tormented him. Ravina insisted they had to rescue the fallen, but Sion knew the terrifying truth. Ainswolf wielded an unseen magical energy, and only a few could even perceive it. The creatures that had appeared before were nothing more than a warning. The real battle had just begun. Grast demanded to know what kind of magic Ainswolf possessed, and if it was similar to Shion's. But even Sion couldn't understand the full extent of the demon's power. Its magical energy was unlike anything he had encountered, surpassing his own by an unimaginable scale. The revelation left everyone in shock, but Grast refused to back down. Even if it meant certain death, he couldn't stand idly by while the demon continued its rampage. Without hesitation, Ainswolf unleashed more destruction upon the city, its attacks relentless and merciless. Civilians fell one after another, their cries lost in the chaos. Seeing this, Sion knew there was no other choice. They had to stop Ainswolf before it reached his family. He turned to Grast, offering his help. Since he was the only one who could see the demon's magical energy, he would have to be the one to lead the attack. Grast had no choice but to trust him, and together they prepared for battle. While Sion and Grast faced Ainswolf, Ravina and Brogit focused on evacuating the people. Sion devised a plan. He would distract the demon while Grast attacked from behind. Though shocked at the risk, Grast agreed, knowing there was no better option. Before they charged, he urged Sion to be careful, unable to bear the thought of facing his family if something happened to him. But Sion was resolute. He had no intention of dying here. As the battle raged on, soldiers fell, one after another. Amidst the chaos, Sion managed to save two who were moments away from death. Ainswolf, witnessing this, narrowed its gaze in curiosity. It hadn't expected Sion to wield magical energy. The sight of the red-haired, red-eyed warrior triggered a memory, leading Ainswolf to suspect that Sion was a descendant of Lakria. But in its eyes, humans weren't supposed to have such abilities. With a voice filled with menace, Ainswolf demanded answers, wanting to know where the rest of humanity had hidden and how a mere child could defy it. Sion struggled to grasp the meaning behind the demon's words. The creature, however, seemed amused by his confusion. It mocked him, claiming that everything had happened 1,000 years ago and that he had been deceived by traitors. According to the demon, humans had not learned from their past mistakes and remained as foolish as ever. Sion, being just a child, knew nothing of the truth and had been manipulated without realizing it. But even if he was unaware, the demon had no intention of sparing him. Determined not to fall, Sion surrounded himself with magic as the demon launched a fierce attack. He managed to evade the strikes, but the relentless assault did not stop. Dodging each attack, he attempted to counter, yet his efforts had no effect. The demon moved with incredible speed, appearing behind him in an instant. Though Sion tried to react, he was struck with force. Even so, he endured and refused to collapse. The demon, eager to display its true strength, unleashed a powerful spell. A sense of dread filled Sion as he realized the sheer difference in power. If this continued, not only would he perish, but so would everyone else. Memories of his loved ones surfaced in his mind, reigniting his determination. He could not allow himself to die here. Meanwhile, the injured were being rushed to the hospital. The doctors were horrified by the severity of the burns covering their bodies. One of them demanded an explanation, but the patients could only describe the destruction they had witnessed. A mysterious figure had appeared out of nowhere, engulfing the entire city in flames. Kuel, deep in thought, suspected the use of magic and wondered about Shion's fate. Elsewhere, Ravina and Brigitte continued guiding civilians to safety. 2 soldiers under Ravina's command managed to find her, relieved that she was unharmed. When she asked about Sion, they had no answers. The battlefield had been nothing but fire and chaos, making it impossible to see what had happened. One of them doubted that even Sion could defeat the monstrous enemy they had encountered. Despite the uncertainty, Ravina decided to go back and help. Brigitte was shocked and warned her against it, insisting that it would be suicide. But Ravina refused to stand by while Sion faced such a powerful enemy alone. Back at the battlefield, Sion was on the verge of being struck down. In a desperate move, he cast a spell that split the ground beneath him, allowing him to escape underground at the last moment. The demon, enraged by the trick, prepared to attack again. However, before it could act, Sion struck first. Unfortunately, his attack proved useless. He was taken aback. His magic should have worked. Electricity was unknown in this world, yet the demon had avoided any damage. The realization hit him. The demon had already analyzed his attacks and countered them before they could land. A wicked smile crossed the demon's face as it praised Sion's creativity, but mocked his lack of true understanding. Every spell had weaknesses, and the magic he was using was still at a basic level. He had yet to grasp the true nature of fire and lightning. If he understood the deeper logic behind magic, he could unleash all elements freely. But at his current skill level, he was nothing more than a novice. The demon found his struggle entertaining, but the battle was about to end. Seizing an opportunity, Grast attempted a surprise attack. However, the demon reacted effortlessly, countering the strike and delivering a devastating blow. Grast was left seriously wounded, his body unable to withstand the sheer force of the demon's power. Sion's father arrived on the battlefield and attempted to strike the demon, but his attack had no effect. The demon, unfazed, mocked the attempt and easily tossed him aside before turning back to Sion. Despite the overwhelming situation, Sion's determination to fight had not wavered, something the demon found intriguing. Acknowledging his strength and lineage, the demon offered him a deal: immense power and an extended lifespan in exchange for his identity. He would lose all sense of self and become nothing more than a puppet. Realizing the danger, Sion tried to escape, but the demon swiftly caught him. Without hesitation, it revealed sharp, vampire-like fangs and sank them into Sion's neck, draining his blood. As his strength faded, he felt powerless. Just as he was about to give in, an image of a fairy appeared in his mind. Immediately, the demon recoiled, struggling to breathe. It recognized the fairy's blessing and became enraged, cursing the interference of those it called traitors. Its body reacted violently to Sion's blood, weakening it for a brief moment. However, it quickly regained its composure and unleashed a devastating spell, aiming to end Sion once and for all. Before the attack could land, Ravina intervened, saving him at the last second. The demon, now furious, prepared to strike again, but Sion urged Ravina to buy him a little more time. He knew he needed to gather. The intense heat burned through its body, causing it to scream in agony. The blue flames consumed the demon, breaking it down piece by piece. It struggled to comprehend what was happening until Sion explained the nature of his magic. The demon's arrogance had prevented it from understanding the dangers of blue flame magic, which had now turned against it. Unable to escape its fate, it cursed Sion one last time before vanishing completely. Ravina, still in shock, questioned if they had truly won. Sion, exhausted, confirmed that even if the demon wasn't completely destroyed, it no longer had any magic left to fight. With those final words, he collapsed from exhaustion. Ravina reassured him that it was finally over, that their victory was real. As he drifted into unconsciousness, one thought remained in Sion's mind. He would finally see his sister again. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching.